Okay guys, hi, welcome back to part 2. Literally between the first and the second video, it was like 2 seconds. So what I was going to say is well, I gave you a bit of a rundown as to what's going on the island, and you are aware of some of what you can see coming up on my channel. But I did promise in previous videos, previous uploads rather, that while we don't celebrate Halloween here, I would contribute some local folklore to the Halloween spirit that many of you do observe. And you know, every country, I believe, they have their folklore. There are, you know, the tales, the mysteries, the you know, what's it called, the strange things, the mythical creatures, you know, whatever you want to call it. I mean, every country has something to that effect, and we are no less. I will say that much of our mythical creatures and folklore stem from the African culture, and some of it are a mix of Afro and European. You need to understand that when the slaves were brought over, I mean, everyone knows that slavery was a very, very, and very is an understatement, difficult thing for those who had to endure. There are no words to express the terror, the horror, the pain that these people went through, being torn from their homes, put on a boat, sent halfway around the world, and told that they had no choice but to work, to endure hardship and labor, or die. So, as I mentioned in the previous video, we had the French here, we had the British, we had the French, we had get more of this color. We had the French, we had the British, we had the Portuguese, we had the Spanish, yeah. So we had all of these different peoples here, and they were all slave owners. I mean, they brought slaves in to work. At the time, this island was top producers for sugarcane, sugar from sugarcane, derived from sugarcane, producers of coffee, cocoa, and from which you get chocolate, rice, and rum, which we still do have factories. If you know about alcohol, you may know the name Fernandez and Angostura. Angostura, of course, makes the world famous Angostura bitters, which is often used in drinks and cocktails. That is made right here in Trinidad and Tobago. And we do have rums and whiskies that have won many awards in Europe. And these are alcohols that are made locally, and this has been something that's been going on the island for hundreds of years. But anyway, as I was saying, the slaves used to, because I mean, they didn't really have entertainment. They get up, they work, get beaten, get misused, obviously, and if they're lucky, they get more than one meal for the day, and they go to bed. But they used to, from the barracks in which they stayed, the huts in which they all stayed in, they would observe their European masters, you know, what they did, how they behaved, their culture, the way they did, you know, they socialized, etc. And they would often, the slaves, they would often follow, they would mimic, and eventually slaves learned to speak the languages, and so they learned. And in my contribution towards the Halloween season, I would like to introduce you all to a mythical being, local folklore, a creature called the Soucouyant. Soucouyant being a French word, and it's basically French. It's a local patois French word. It would not necessarily be the French that is spoken in France, but it basically means vampire or female vampire. And this is something that the slaves would have heard the French masters speak about, because I believe that is where in France they experienced, or there was a lot of talk about vampires, and you know, it came down to the Caribbean, and that's where the slaves picked it up from. So I am actually going to read. I will throw up pictures, obviously, so that you can see what the Soucouyant looked like. So I have here some reading, and I will read it out loud. Okay. Right. So it was said long ago that certain French families brought the vampire tradition to Trinidad. These European vampires intermingled with their enslaved African counterparts, and out of this the Soucouyant emerged. The Soucouyant makes a pact with the devil, and as such can assume any form. Her first undertaking is to go to a cemetery and dig up a freshly buried corpse and cut out the liver. From this, an oil is made. When this oil is rubbed all over, she can then slip out of her skin The skin is kept in a mortar or hollowed out trunk of a tree, used to parch coffee or ferment cocoa beans. Right? Old people in Paramin, and Paramin is a village that is located in the heights of our northern range, Trinidad. On the northern part of the island, there is a northern, what we call the northern range, which is the entire north of the island is mountainous. It's very, very high mountains, dense forests, and up there is a village called Paramin. And when you go to Paramin, it's like taking a walk back in time, because everything is very, it's old-timey, it's not modern. Old-fashioned houses and very country way of life. And Paramin is very famous for parang music, which is our local music for Christmas. And I will get into parang music at a later video when I start to talk about Christmas. So old people in Paramin would tell you about a Soucouyant called Desiree, who on a bet flew to London to steal one of Queen Victoria's gold spoons. However, on her way back with the spoon, she catch malkidi, which is she got sick, right? Over Dant Ma Titeron in the first Bocas. On the northern part of our islands, there are a lot of smaller islands called the Bocas, and one of the islands, which looks like a tooth because it's just jagged bit of rock coming out of the sea, it's called Ma Titeron. And the spoon fell from her. The large gold spoon to this day lies on the rock in the middle of the first Bocas. A Soucouyant, or vampire, doesn't always suck you. She could pinch you too, or cuff you, and in the morning you would have large black and blue marks that turn a little greenish. After a while, you could begin to feel bad, weak, thin, frail, lose weight. By that time, your eye sockets are sinking in your head and you are only staring all the time. Then you die. Sometimes she is a bat, sometimes a pig. There was a Soucouyant who used to live at the top of Henry Street. Henry Street is in our town, the city of Port of Spain. She caused a lot of problems with people coming home late. There was a shop owner, and he emptied a 100-pound bag of rice in front of Rosary Church. The next morning they saw 3 big pigs eating the rice. And you need to understand, according to legend, if you want to trap a Soucouyant, you can scatter salt across your doorway. They can't come in. If you scatter the salt, they would have to pick each grain up and count it. It's the same with rice. Anything that, you know, has a lot of grains in it, that would be almost impossible to count each one. That's what you need to put. So if usually what would happen is, if you wake up on mornings and you happen to see strange bruises all over your body and there's no explaining where it came from, and then you would see all of those signs that I mentioned, you know, vacant eyes, staring, feeling sick, weak, no energy at all, losing weight, it would often be thought that you were being attacked by a Soucouyant or vampire. So what the elders would often recommend is that you scatter salt around your house, or rice grains around your house or across your doorway, so that she cannot enter. She would have to count each grain, and by the time she finishes, if it's daytime, you know, daytime should come, so she would not be able to attack. She would have to leave, right? So yeah, they would recommend that you throw the rice or the salt, right? So that's what that shop owner did. He trapped the Soucouyant by throwing a lot of rice, and by the time morning came, they found the pigs. As I said, she can transform into these things. Now, there was a legend where usually the Soucouyant is said to be an old woman who lives on the edge of a village, and she is usually, you know, very rarely ever seen during the daytime, and she keeps to herself. She doesn't mingle with the other villagers. She just keeps to herself, and she just has an air about her that, you know, no one wants to mess with her, no one wants to mingle with her or talk to her in any way, and she just keeps to herself. She is that kind of woman is often thought or suspected to be a vampire or a Soucouyant. A Soucouyant, people see it in the sky. What happens is she takes off her skin, and as I mentioned in the story, she takes off her skin, puts it in a hiding place, in that mortar, in that barrel, that container, and she can ascend into the sky as a ball of fire and travel. So she goes to wherever she wants to go as a ball of fire in the sky, and you know, when she's finished doing whatever it is she went to do that night, whether it's to attack someone or whatever, she comes back. She will go and find her skin and put her skin on, and she becomes the old woman again. Now, if villagers suspected that someone was Soucouyant and they wanted to stop her, particularly, you know, if she is sorry, if she is attacking, oh, I should have some water, my throat is dry. Excuse me one moment please, I'm taking off my so a lot of talking. Okay, I'll just put that aside for now. My magnifiers, I always diamond paint with magnifiers because I can't see very well. So yeah, as I was saying, if you wanted to catch the vampire, the Soucouyant, what you would do is you need to gather some very strong men. You need to lie in wait outside of her home, and you know, you look out for when she leaves. Someone has to see where she hides her skin, right? And once they see that, when she takes off her skin and she hides it and she turns into the ball of fire and goes off, what they would do is they would take salt and they would sprinkle it, a lot of it, all over her skin, right? And they would go back into that hiding spot, you know, whether they're hiding in the bushes, up in the trees, whatever, they would go back into that hiding spot and they would wait for her to return. Now, what would happen is when she comes back and she goes to put on her skin, when she puts on her skin, the salt will burn her, right? The salt will make her itch and burn, and she will just not feel good. She will want to keep it off, and then the sun will rise and catch her without her skin and she dies. So, and I know this because this is what the elders would say. We have heard many times about people doing this. I've never met anyone who have done this, but there are many people who have heard or have had elders who have done this. Now, in this modern day and age, you don't see many people doing it. You don't hear many people doing it anymore. But back in the day, like in the days of my mom and my grandparents, my great-grandparents, this was a big thing. It was a very, very big thing. We have other folklores, of course, but that these things were all, you know, really, yeah, I don't want to call it entertainment, but it was considered a real thing back then, a very real thing. So the Soucouyant would die, and I can tell you that when my mom got married and she left her village to come live in my father's village, within the first year of her marriage, now my mom, when she was quite young, she was very, very beautiful, and she started to get that black and blue mark all over her body. And of course the elders said, you know, she was being attacked by a Soucouyant. My mom experienced the weakness, the, you know, the fatigue, the feeling ill and nauseous and losing weight, and the staring. She was very sick, my mom. And what they did, they didn't go chasing after the Soucouyant, but they put the salt around her bed and the rice around the house. So when they did that, that's everything stopped. You know, I mean, strange as it is and strange as it sounds, that's when everything stopped. Okay. So before we go, and this is the other half hour, so you heard about the Soucouyant, and in another video I will probably tell you about another mysterious character in our local folklore. Before we go, I want to give you another mystery, and that is the mystery tombstone of Betty Stephen, and that is over in our sister island of Tobago. In the quiet fishing village of Plymouth, Tobago, there is a mysterious tombstone, and it has a mysterious inscription that has been unsolved for over 200 years to date. Unsolved. Right? So I'm going to read it to you, and I will throw up a picture, obviously, so that you can see it. The tombstone was erected in 1783 in memory of Betty Stephen. The mysterious inscription has baffled visitors and left open to interpretation ever since. It reads, "Beneath these walls are deposited the body of Mrs. Betty Stephen and her child. She was the beloved wife of Alex B. Stephen. To the end of his days," let me say that again, "to the end of his days will deplore her death, which happened upon the 25th of November 1783, in the 23rd year of her age. What was remarkable of her, she was a mother without knowing it, and a wife without letting her husband know it, except by her kind indulgence to him." Now, there has been many theories concerning that. That is what is written on the tombstone, and there has been many theories. No one has been able to find proof or, you know, just absolutely solve it. One theory is that there was a romance between a European slave master and an African female slave in that time, and that, you know, that was not something that you would do. That was taboo. Others claim that Betty gave birth to a child while unconscious, because it says she was a mother without knowing it. So, you know, no one knows, and that is a mystery. So I will throw up a picture of the gravestone, and you can also Google it and you can see for yourself, and maybe you can come up with a theory as to who Betty Steven was and what that message on her tombstone, what it actually meant. So guys, I just want to say thank you so very much for joining me. Thank you for listening in on part 2 of my WIP chat. I did not do much whipping in this one, more chatting, but I want to thank you for joining me, and I will try to record another one maybe by Friday, and I will give you maybe 2 more characters from our local folklore, and you know, maybe I'll do another one with another 1 or 2 characters from our folklore, so that you can have a fair idea as to what we have here on the island, and it might be something of interest to listen to while you work on your WIPs as well. So thank you for joining me again, and you know, if you like what you've heard, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and hit the bell for notifications if you want to be notified about any new uploads I may do. Thank you again for visiting, and I will see you all on the next one. Bye-bye.